Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Have you ever seen a single moment flip everything you thought you knew about someone? Let us know in the comments section below. Ayana Patterson didn't wear her badge on her chest. She wore it in the tension she carried between her shoulder blades, the way she scanned a room twice before speaking, and how her silence held more weight than most people's words. Her neighbors thought she worked in HR for the city. Her goddaughter thought she taught kids how to say no to drugs. Only a few people in the state of Illinois knew the truth, that Ayana was a senior investigator with the Office of Special Integrity, and she was the kind of woman other cops feared quietly. Not because she was cruel, but because she was exact, because she didn't miss. This morning she moved with purpose, in jeans and an old Northwestern hoodie, keys in hand, her braids still damp from the shower. She was off-duty, technically. But in her line of work, off-duty was a myth you told yourself so you could sleep at night. The grocery store was packed with the kind of late-afternoon crowd that didn't notice much. Moms rushing through the aisles, teens texting at the self-checkout, a retired couple arguing over almond butter. Ayana grabbed a cart and slipped in behind the produce like she was just another woman with a list and a life. But near aisle 7, behind the wall of cereal boxes and canned soup, stood a man who noticed everything. Officer Brent Walker, white, 28, barely 3 years on the force, but already moving like he owned every square foot of sidewalk he walked on. He'd been transferred from Decatur under administrative tension, though no one in his new precinct used the word disciplinary. Brent had a square jaw, mirrored sunglasses, and a deep resentment he didn't even recognize as racism. He called it instincts, situational awareness. What he really had was a chip on his shoulder and a copy of American Sniper in his locker. When Brent saw Ayana cutting across the store, brown skin, no uniform, confident gait, he felt that same thrum in his chest he always got when something didn't feel right. "Ah!" he whispered into his radio. "Possible surveillance on aisle 7, lone female, suspicious posture." The dispatcher didn't even respond. Brent adjusted his utility belt even though he wasn't supposed to be wearing it off-duty. He followed Ayana slowly, watching the way she paused in front of the yogurt case, how she checked her phone. Something about her irritated him. She was too calm, too poised. She looked like she thought she belonged there. He stepped into her line of sight, eyes narrowed. "Ma'am," he said, low and clipped. Ayana didn't flinch. She knew the tone. She'd heard it echo in countless reports, seen it transcribed in the complaints that ended up on her desk. Still, she turned with the kind of patience most people reserve for toddlers. "Can I help you?" Brent's hand rested near his belt. "I'm gonna need to see some items." Ayana blinked once. "Why?" He leaned in. "There's been some shoplifting incidents in this area. We've got footage of someone matching your description." "You got footage of a black woman buying Greek yogurt?" she said, not loud, but sharp enough to draw a glance from the woman behind the cheese counter. Brent's jaw tensed. "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "I didn't make it hard," she replied, calmly reaching into her bag. "You did." He snatched the ID before she even extended it fully. His fingers fumbled when he saw the metallic flash. The badge was embedded into the leather like it had been waiting for this moment. Office of Special Integrity, rank Senior Investigator. Ayana crossed her arms. Brent stepped back half an inch. His mouth opened, closed, his whole demeanor cracked in real time, like ice under a warm tire. He stood there, staring, caught between shame and protocol. He hadn't even asked her name. "Anything else you need, officer?" she asked, voice now edged with a dry chill. He swatted. "No, ma'am. Thank you for your service." She tilted her head slightly. "That wasn't a salute." Brent fumbled again, lifting 2 fingers to his forehead. It was more reflex than respect. Then he turned and walked away, like he could somehow erase the last 5 minutes of his life. Ayana exhaled once and watched him go. Behind her, the woman at the cheese counter mouthed a quiet, "Damn." Ayana turned back to the yogurt. She still needed eggs. Ayana didn't speak a word the entire drive home. The car hummed under her fingers, windows cracked just enough to let the wind slip through. It tangled with the scent of her cinnamon hand cream and the faint trace of something fried from the deli bag in her passenger seat. She didn't touch the radio. The silence was a choice. It always was. Inside her building, the mailboxes buzzed with the static of old lights and the faint aroma of pine sol rising from the janitor's closet. Unit 3C had a small yellow sticky note on the door. "Janelle stopped by. You ignoring me again?" A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. She left the note up. Her apartment was simple. Clean lines, deep browns. Photographs of her late parents still hung in the hallway, along with an award she refused to display anywhere more visible, the Medal of Civil Integrity, given after she exposed the Project Echo scandal inside Chicago's narcotics unit, a scandal that made her the department's nightmare and legend all at once. She dropped her grocery bags on the counter and stood there, just breathing. The badge wasn't heavy, but moments like earlier, those were. And not because of the disrespect. That was familiar, almost expected. No, it was the way it all happened, with clockwork precision. The words, the posture, the assumption. Like the system replicated itself, one badge at a time. Ayana peeled off her hoodie and pulled her braids back into a tighter bun. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. Instead, she opened her laptop. There were files to review. Complaints, evaluations, internal emails flagged by the new AI screening system they called Sentinel. It wasn't smart enough to detect bias, but it could count how many times the word threat appeared in a body cam transcript involving unarmed civilians. She clicked on one folder, then another. She didn't notice how long she'd been sitting until her tea had gone cold and her back ached from leaning forward. She rubbed her temples and stood to stretch when the knock came. 3 taps. Sharp. Familiar. Janelle. Ayana opened the door without a word, and her friend walked in carrying 2 paper bags that smelled like oxtail and rice. "Didn't feel like waiting for you to text back," Janelle said, placing the bags on the table. "Kind of guessing you ran into another rookie with a cape and a savior complex?" Ayana let out a dry laugh. "Something like that." Janelle popped the lids off the containers. Steam curled up. She moved like she belonged in the apartment, because she did. They'd met during their academy years, before Janelle left law enforcement to become a trauma counselor for youth in Inglewood. Ayana had stayed. Somebody had to. Did he ask for your name, or just skip to demanding ID? Didn't even try to dance around it. Janelle sat down, unwrapping a plastic fork. "I'll never get over the confidence it takes to be wrong and loud." Ayana sat across from her. "It's not confidence. It's muscle memory." Janelle chewed slowly, watching her. "You ever wonder if it's worth it?" Ayana paused, fork midway to her mouth. "No. I didn't even think about that. I don't have to." She pushed the rice around with her fork. "If I stop showing up, who replaces me? Someone like Brent?" Janelle nodded slowly. "Point taken." A long silence settled between them. Not heavy, just lived in. The kind of silence forged from nights spent in hospital waiting rooms and on opposite sides of the interrogation glass. "I heard about the State Review Board," Janelle said, breaking it. Ayana stiffened. They want you to take the lead on the Cultural Bias Training Project. Mandatory seminars. Curriculum design. The whole thing? You gonna do it?" Ayana didn't answer right away. She stared at the window, watching the blurred halo of a street lamp shimmer through the grime of city glass. "Last time I did something public-facing," she said quietly, "they called me a traitor, said I hated the badge, got anonymous letters at my mother's old address. One had a bullet in it. That wasn't from the people who matter." "No," Ayana said, meeting her friend's eyes. "It was from the people in uniform." Another silence passed, deeper this time. Janelle reached across the table, hand covering Ayana's. "Don't let cowards decide your legacy." Ayana's lips pressed into a thin line. She nodded once, then pulled her hand away gently and stood. She walked into her bedroom and opened the closet. Inside, pressed and silent, hung the suit she hadn't worn in 4 years. Dark navy, no badge, just fabric and formality. She touched it like it might bite. On the shelf above it was a photo of her academy graduation. Ayana in uniform, her mother on one side, her brother Darius on the other. Darius, who hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. "Patterson," she said, voice clear. "Ma'am, this is Captain Herrera. Got a report about an incident involving you earlier today, supermarket. Officer Brent Walker." Ayana closed her eyes briefly. "Confirmed. You okay?" "Fine. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Word's already made it back to internal. They'll want a statement." "I know the drill." There was a pause. "He didn't recognize you?" "Never even got my name." Herrera sighed. "You want me to handle it?" "No," she said. "I'll write it up, and I'll start drafting the seminar plan." He was quiet for a beat. "Understood." Ayana hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then she opened her laptop again and began to type. Her first slide said, "The most dangerous assumptions wear a badge and carry no name." The first time Ayana met Darius after their mother's funeral, he wouldn't look her in the eye. He stood 3 feet away in their childhood backyard, staring at the cracked stepping stones their dad had laid one sweaty June afternoon when they still thought normalcy was possible. Darius was older by 5 years, but in that moment he looked like the little brother. Shoulders hunched, jaw set, his hands were clenched, like he was afraid of what they might do if he let go. "You should have never worn that uniform to the service," he said. Ayana didn't respond. She had worn it because she knew their mother would have wanted her to, because dignity, even in mourning, was still her language. Now, years later, he was finally on the other end of her call. "I wasn't sure this number still worked," Ayana said. "I wasn't sure you still remembered it." Silence hummed. "I need a favor," she said. That got his attention. "You? Needing me? This must be serious." "It is. Let me guess. Someone finally caught you writing up too many of your own." "It's about a training seminar. Statewide rollout. I'm heading it." "You call that a favor? Sounds like a campaign." "I need you to be part of it." He laughed, once, sharp. "You want me to smile pretty for the same system that locked up 3 of my friends by 25? I want you to speak. Tell them what it felt like to be profiled at 15. Still feels the same. And how?" He exhaled into the phone, long and slow. "I don't do well in rooms full of uniforms." "They won't be in uniform, but they'll still be cops." He repeated. She could hear him thinking, the way his breath slowed, the shift in his tone as something thawed. "Only because it's you, and because Mama would have wanted me to say yes." Ayana closed her eyes and let herself feel that for a second. "Next Friday," she said. 10 a.m., downtown. I'll be there. But I'm not wearing a suit." "You never did." He hung up, versed. Friday came faster than expected. Ayana stood in the conference room early, before anyone else arrived. The The chairs were arranged in a wide semicircle. Not a lecture hall, but a forum. No podium, no divide, just people, eye to eye. She didn't want distance. She wanted tension. Real tension, the kind that builds when people can't hide behind titles. The PowerPoint was already cued, though she knew she'd barely use it. The screen read, identity, assumption, authority, and the cost of misreading. She wore a gray blouse, soft gold earrings, and no visible sign of rank. She needed them to hear her, not salute her. The first few attendees entered hesitantly. Patrol officers and lieutenants in plain clothes, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Most of them assumed it was just another box to check. Some looked annoyed, others openly skeptical. Ayana greeted them all the same. Nod, direct eye contact, no smile unless it was earned. Brent Walker arrived 15 minutes late. He hesitated in the doorway, saw her at the front, then picked the seat farthest from her, near the exit. He didn't make eye contact. Boxoid, Ayana began without preamble. Raise your hand if you've ever misjudged someone. A few reluctant hands went up. She nodded. Now, raise your hand if that misjudgment had consequences. Only 3 hands stayed up. She looked directly at Brent. His hand was in his lap. I don't want your apologies, she said. I want your attention. I want your discomfort. Because if you leave here today and the only thing you feel is safe, then I've failed. She let that hang. Then she gestured toward the door as it opened. Darius walked in wearing a hoodie that said, "We are not the threat," in block white letters. Some eyes narrowed, others widened. He sat at the center of the room, legs stretched, arms crossed. "This is my brother," Ayana said. "He's been stopped 7 times in the last 4 years. Once while jogging, once while leaving work. 3 times with our nephew in the back seat. Each time the officers said he matched a description." Darius stood. "My name is Ayana Patterson," he said. "And I've got 2 degrees, no criminal record, and a mortgage I pay on time. But that didn't matter when a flashlight was in my face and a hand was on a holster." The room was quiet. He pointed at a tall white officer near the back. "You think this kind of thing happens because you're bad people. It doesn't. It happens because you were trained to see shadows where there are none, and nobody ever told you to stop." One officer leaned forward, uncomfortable. "So what do you want us to do? Stop checking when something feels off?" "No," Darius said. "We want you to question why it feels off. Who taught you what danger looks like, what color it is, what age it is?" Ayana stepped beside him. "We are not here to shame you," she said. "We're here because shame hasn't worked. Silence hasn't worked. We're here to confront the story you tell yourselves before you approach a vehicle, before you stop a woman buying yogurt, before you put a hand on a gun." Brent shifted in his seat. Ayana looked at him, held his gaze. "You remember me?" she asked. He swallowed, nodded. "What did I look like that day?" He opened his mouth, closed it. Then, barely above a whisper, "You looked calm, confident. And that made me a threat?" He didn't answer. Ayana nodded. "That's the work. That's what this is about." She paused. "I'm not interested in who you were last week. I care who you are when you leave this room." The lights dimmed. The first slide faded in. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. She clicked it off. And they began. Brent Walker didn't speak for the rest of the seminar. Not when Darius told the story of being dragged out of his car with his 6-year-old nephew watching from the back seat. Not when Ayana played the body cam footage of a similar stop that ended with an apology too late to undo the trauma. Not even when the senior officer beside him muttered, "We have got to do better," under his breath. But Brent was listening. Every shift of his posture said so. His arms, which started crossed, eventually uncrossed, his jaw unclenched. By the time the last officer left and Ayana was folding her laptop, Brent was still in his chair, eyes on the floor like he'd lost something important and didn't know how to ask for help finding it. She didn't approach him. Not yet. Let him sit in it. Outside, the air was cool and the city sounded softer. Ayana stepped onto the sidewalk, heels clicking against the concrete like punctuation. Darius walked beside her, one hand in his hoodie pocket, the other sipping from a lukewarm coffee he swiped from the refreshment table on the way out. "You think it worked?" he asked. "It's not about today," Ayana said. "It's about what they do tomorrow." Darius looked at her. "Still, you got through to him." He didn't ask who. She already knew. They parted ways near the train. He pulled her into a hug. Longer than usual. "Proud of you, sis," he said. "Always have been, even when I didn't show it." "I know." She watched him disappear through the turnstile, then turned to head back to her car, her mind already drifting toward the next briefing, the next rollout, the next hard room she'd have to stand in. She could see Bruno in the gloomy waiting room. But life, sometimes, interrupts in the spaces between appointments. Investigator Patterson. She turned. Brent Walker stood 10 feet away. No sunglasses, no swagger. Just him, bare and unsure. "You wanted me to help them?" She considered him, nodded once. "I didn't know who you were," he said. "I know." "But that's not the problem, is it?" he asked. "The problem is, I didn't care who you could be." She said nothing. He took a breath. "I thought I was one of the good ones. I thought checking a woman's ID because she matched a description was just me doing my job." "You weren't doing your job," she said quietly. "You were trying to prove something to yourself, that your gut was smarter than your training, that instinct makes you right." He nodded slowly. "You ever mess up like that?" Ayana smiled, but not unkindly. "Of course. The difference is, I didn't defend the mistake. I learned from it." Brent shifted his weight. "I want to be better. Then get to work." He paused again. Then, without hesitation, brought 2 fingers to his temple and gave her a proper salute. No sarcasm, no performative sharpness. Just a simple gesture of acknowledgement. She didn't return it, but she nodded. A week later, Ayana sat at the back of a community town hall in Bronzeville. Folding chairs were arranged in crooked rows, and the mic was wired to a speaker that crackled every time someone got too close. Kids whispered in the back row. Grandmothers in church hats took notes like they were prepping for midterm. Janelle stood up front, introducing the new police community partnership initiatives. Ayana had written the draft policy and trained most of the panel, but she didn't want to be the face of it. Not this time. Let others carry it forward. Midway through the Q&A, an older man stood with a question about traffic stops. Before he could finish, Brent, seated in uniform near the aisle, raised his hand and offered to respond. Ayana turned, surprised. He spoke clearly, choosing each word with care. No jargon, no defensiveness, just honest reflection and a commitment to change. When he finished, the room clapped. Not wildly, but sincerely. Ayana watched from the corner, her expression unreadable. Later, as the crowd began to thin and chairs were stacked 2 by 2, Brent made his way toward her. "I read the packet you put together," he said. "The new de-escalation flowcharts, the empathy-based engagement model. I've been using them." She raised an eyebrow. He smiled. "Kid dropped his bike in the middle of the road last week. I got out, helped him up. His mom was watching from the porch. First time I think I've ever felt welcome on a block like that." Ayana gave a small nod. "You didn't have to keep coming," she said. "These events aren't mandatory." "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm here." A quiet moment passed. Then Janelle joined them, eyes bright, arms full of flyers. "You staying for the round table?" she asked Ayana. "Wise wouldn't miss it." Brent stepped back, giving them space. As he turned, Ayana called out, "Officer Walker." He stopped. "Don't stop showing up." He smiled, more confident now. "I won't." By the end of the month, the curriculum Ayana developed had been approved by the state board. 3 major departments adopted it immediately. Others followed. She began getting emails from officers she'd never met, asking for resources, sharing progress, requesting additional training. The ripple had started. And it wasn't about her badge anymore, because it was about the people it reached, the people it could protect. Ayana stood at her mother's grave that Sunday, a breeze brushing the collar of her coat. The grass was soft, the sun warm. In her hand was a folded program from the seminar, the same one Brent had asked her to sign. She placed it beside the headstone. "I'm still in it, Mama," she whispered, "still fighting. But I'm not alone this time." Behind her, Darius waited by the car, leaning on the hood with his arms folded. Ayana turned and walked toward him. They drove home together, windows down, the city unfolding around them. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something like peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because something had truly changed.